Welcome to the Voice of East Turkestan podcast, produced by the Center for East Turkestan National Interest. Today, we are pleased to welcome the Mrs. Rukiye Turdush to discuss her recent report published by the Center for East Turkestan National Interest. Welcome, Rukiye Turdush. In your report, you called the first phase as a genocide, repression, and a symbolic victory. Could you please clarify why it is a...
We all know that China has detained 1 to 3 million people since 2017, and 900,000 Uyghur children were removed from their home to so-called state orphanage camps and boarding schools. These children were not allowed to speak Uyghur language and not practice their religion, not practice their culture, even not allowed to visit their home or relatives unless they are in boarding schools. Children in boarding school only allowed to visit their families if their parents were not detained and at home, only once in 2 weeks. Also, Chinese government used other very brutal genocidal policies in East Turkestan, and Uyghur society is destroyed with forced labor and forced sterilization. Here is China's special genocidal intent is very clear, at least in its 2 acts defined in Genocide Convention. One is sterilization and prevention of birth, because there is nothing can explain rather than aiming to eradicate Uyghur population in this act. Right? Removing children from their home and transforming them into ethnic Han Chinese also explain China's special intent, because by stealing Uyghur children, they will destroy the future of Uyghur nation. Because without children and the young generation, how this nation would survive and exist? So what Chinese state and Chinese state representatives doing in East Turkestan is shocking and horrendous, and of course this caused international attention at first. China faced criticism, international pressure on China has increased, and advocacy for Uyghurs has gained a lot of attention and the support from Western countries. For example, in 2020, October, Canadian Parliament Subcommittee on International Human Rights issued a report stating that the actions of the Chinese Communist Party constitute a genocide. And 2021 January, the U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo issued statement and stating that the China committing genocide and crime against the humanity against Uyghurs. Same year, 2021 February. There's Belgium, Sweden, UK, and some Eastern European countries, New Zealand, all passed motion in their parliament and declared that China was committing genocide against the Uyghurs. And Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has indicated also that such violation of China may constitute crime against humanity. And in 2022, the 51 countries led by Canada condemned China over atrocity against the Uyghurs and their regime against the Uyghur population after China was elected to the UN Human Rights Council for the 2024 and 2026 term. In this year, 2025, core group countries, they are also mainly Western countries led by United States and UK and Canada, and issued joint statement at second anniversary of the OHCHR's assessment and criticized China's denial of its genocide and crime. So China's behavior caused international attention widely until today, until 2024. And China faced a lot of criticism. Also, the number of Uyghur advocacy and research organizations in diaspora has increased rapidly since 2017. Protest against China's genocide in Uyghur diaspora widespread. Even I would like to note something here. the mindset of many Uyghurs who are willing to stay with China and consider themselves as Chinese citizens and do not want to involve with any kind of political issues and want to just quietly stay with China as long as China do not kill them. They change. These people's minds are changed too. And they finally realize that survival for Uyghurs is not possible without ending the Chinese colonialism in East Turkestan. This is a huge ideological gain for Uyghur struggles. Despite facing immense challenges in confronting both the genocide itself and widespread denial of it, the Uyghurs' hope for the future were not diminished. The power of China and its genocidal intent and its action have not totally deterred Uyghurs' faith, at least in Uyghur diaspora. So I'm thinking that China underestimated strength of Uyghurs and East Turkestanian people. I'm thinking this is the victory too, but I can say this is a symbolic. Most importantly, close to 100 years of oppression forced people, the East Turkestanian people, flee from East Turkestan to various other countries around the world. Some of them escaped through South Asia, Turkey to Syria. And China's genocidal policies reinforced these Uyghurs' ideological movement. They organized it as an armed forces in Syrian war zones and emerged as a very important part of the struggle for future independence against the Chinese colonial rule in East Turkestan. This is the biggest victory for Uyghurs against China. But I can say this is a symbolic victory because we're still far from diplomatic, political, and the military victory.
Thank you. You mentioned in your report that there are some factors who causes some stalins of Uyghur independence movement. What is the internal and external factors, and why do you think it is a stalled?
There are several factors that Uyghur struggle did not and achieved future progress stalled. One is China's denial of genocide. They lie and hide genocide. For example, the Chinese government has used euphemistic language for their genocidal policies, such as population control, which is in fact the sterilizing Uyghur women and the detaining so-called illegal children and their parents. They also use vocational education and training centers. In fact, this is a mass detention centers where approximately 1.8 million or 1 to 3 million Uyghurs actually subjected to execution, disappearance, torture, rape, and many kind of other issues. Orphanage camps, in fact, it's prison-style camps, removing children from their home. And they also use poverty alleviation. This should be better explained or described as forced labor. This is not poverty alleviation. The people are forced to remove from East Turkestan to other part of China as work as a slave. So in international world, still some people believe China's lies and manipulated by these words and did not understand China using those kind of euphemistic words. Actually, what is the behind these policies? They either know or they don't want to know. And our cause did not gain much support from the international community. The Chinese government has also used soft tactics, allowing selected Uyghurs visit their relatives in East Turkestan. After these people visit back home or expecting to visit, they were silenced. Do not want to criticize China's crime, and many are avoided to support Uyghur organizations and Uyghur cause. I have interviewed several people and analyzed in my report why China using these soft tactics and how some Uyghurs fall this trap and how they have damaged East Turkestanian cause.
But some Uyghurs arguing that it's our homeland. We couldn't visit our relatives since a long time because China banned the travel. It is an opportunity for us to see our loved ones because China relaxed the travel policy little bit. It's our rights to visit our homeland. What's your opinion about that?
I think no one should have to ask a colonizer for permission to visit their own homeland. But many people are forced to do exactly that, the many Uyghurs. And they asked visa from China and visiting East Turkestan. This is not fair. So many Uyghurs still refused, including me and you, still refused to ask visa and agreed to sign China's conditions, such as supporting China's One China policy against the independence of East Turkestan, against the independence of Taiwan, and against the independence of Tibet, and many other conditions. They signed these conditions and then are going to visit East Turkestan, ask permission from China. This is shame. It should not be happen like that. It's not fair.
Are there another factor, internal factor, why Uyghur Council stalled it?
Another reason that why Uyghur cause was silenced recently and were not achieve any further success against China's crimes is most of the third world countries do not want to criticize China because of their dependency on China. Sadly, those Muslim countries, including Central Asian Turkic countries especially, heavily depend on China's cheap goods, infrastructure investment, and they're afraid of China's military power. This has created great opportunity for China successfully weaken the international community's pressure on China's human rights abuses and the crime against humanity against the Uyghurs and other Turkic people in East Turkestan. These countries were not only silenced, but also supported China's genocidal behavior. For example, Egypt detained and handed over dozens of Uyghur students to China in 2017, right? And after they signed $1 billion economic deal. The Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, he also supported China's policy against the Uyghurs during his visit to China in 2019. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation and many of its member states publicly supported or praised China's policy in East Turkestan. And there is another factor for reason of not taking progress of Uyghur cause because of international crises such as Ukraine war and the Gaza genocide. After the October 7 Hamas attack in Israel, the Trump administration in United States fully supported Israel's bombing and Palestinian civilians in Gaza and the children, despite the international community, including many Western countries, alleging Israel's war crime and the genocide. This has undermined the reputation and the credibility of all human rights voices funded by the United States. Because while you're helping the genocide and killing children in one places, how could you expect that support your voices against another genocide in another place? It's become challenging and difficult. Same time, as a result of the duration and the severity of the Gaza violence and genocide, human rights organizations, international communities, and the civilian population around the global world have directed their attention to Gaza conflict rather than pre-existing Uyghur genocide. These are the external factors, I think.
What about the internal factors?
East Turkestanian people desperately needed strong, unified right-wing group or legitimate entity that represent the East Turkestanian national aspiration of independence. Until today, there have been no single unified entity established representing national will and legal rights. Power struggle among Uyghur organizations always and often emerge as arguments over legitimacy. This lack of unity stems from well-funded sabotage by Beijing. There are multiple Uyghur organizations, and each of them claim that they are the only represent East Turkestanian people. So that's why clarity is urgently needed to define what constitutes legitimate representation, particularly in the international sphere, and how we have to convince the diaspora population of said legitimacy. So this is one of the very important internal factor and among the Uyghurs that to push forward our cause.
We have several Uyghur organizations in diaspora. Do you think any of them could be the legitimate entity? For example, the World Uyghur Congress, exiled government of East Turkestan, or East Turkestan Islamic Party?
Could you repeat your question, please?
Do you think that any of them, this organization could be legitimate entity? For example, the World Uyghur Congress and the exiled government of East Turkestan.
I am not saying these organizations are illegitimate. Actually, I don't decide that. It has to be decided by the people of East Turkestan. I am asking only in my report whether they are truly seen as legitimate representatives of the East Turkestanian people's national will, and whether they are recognized and supported by the people themselves. Because legitimacy must be based on the will and the national aspiration of the East Turkestanian people, which include the right to external self-determination and the sovereignty. Only organizations that clearly, consistently advocate for this vision and recognized and supported by the population, by their own population, the East Turkestanian population, can be considered legitimate representatives of the broader East Turkestanian nation. Uyghur human rights organizations such as World Uyghur Congress, Campaign for the Uyghurs, and Uyghur Human Rights Project, all funded by the National Endowments for Democracy, criticizing China's human rights abuses in East Turkestan. The majority of the Uyghur population in diaspora understands that the East Turkestan issue is not only about human rights issue and is not going to be solved only by criticizing China's record on human rights issues. Uyghurs increasingly recognize that it's foolish to expect from China, the autocratic regime, and especially colonizing power, to respond to such criticism. So many Uyghurs in diaspora have become disappointed with these human rights organizations as their repeated appeals to the international community's moral responsibility have produced little result or no tangible result. But at the same time, the Uyghurs also understand that such criticism, criticizing China's human rights, has been unnecessary for raising global awareness. We think it's necessary, but we don't think they're gonna represent the whole East Turkestanians' national will. World Uyghur Congress's leaders mentioned self-determination of East Turkestanian people several times to the international media before, but they did not mention that they support external self-determination or internal self-determination. Without specifying this vague term, the self-determination, means they left the self-determination to future referendum. However, without strong ideological, political, economical, and the military preparation, grand work, and the diplomacy with statehood vision from now on, it's not possible to achieve independence through peaceful referendum. If you left the decision to the future referendum, how are you going to work on and build the base? It's confusing our mass population, because Chinese settlers constitute majority of the population right now in East Turkestan, and they claim voting rights too. And you asking another organization, I would like to talk about that East Turkestan Islamic Party. Are they legitimate or not, right? East Turkestan Islamic Party is armed force they have gained recognition from mainstream Uyghur population in diaspora as Uyghurs view they could contribute future defense force of East Turkestan. But this recognition and the legitimacy will be short-lived, maybe, because it depending on whether the East Turkestan Islamic Party maintains its goal of establishing sovereignty and sustains itself as a military power or not. Because they are in very challenging and dangerous situation right now. There are also possibility of Syrian government diminish their power and by disarming them, even if they did not handing over them to China. If they're forced to transform into a mercenary proxy of foreign entity or foreign army, that could be dangerous for them. So they have to cautiously deal with those challenges and should work hard to be a legitimate entity in international sphere. We know that United States removed them from the list of the terrorist organization, but they has not been removed from the United Nations Security Council sanctions yet. Without being removed from the United Nations sanctions list, it is extremely difficult for this group to gain international community's recognition and legitimacy. East Turkestan Islamic Party may need to take active measures such as implementing creative changes to its name or complying other concerns of the international community in order to facilitate the lifting of these sanctions. Their legitimacy also depend on future geopolitical landscape across multiple regions in this world, and also it's dependent on the power dynamics and ideology based strategy of the East Turkestan Islamic Party. If you ask me about the East Turkestan government in exile, it's a right-wing organization, and they were thinking they represent the East Turkestanian people's national will, sovereignty, and the independence. There were also several other self-proclaimed government in exile. That's why it makes very difficult any of the such group to identify itself legitimate organization, and it's not very easy or possible for them to organize and mobilize the all Uyghur population politically.
How about the other right-wing organization? Yeah, how about the other right-wing organization to be legitimate entity?
Which organization?
I mean the East Turkestan Youth Congress and the Center for East Turkestan National Interest.
These organizations are not getting any funding, and that's why they have lack of professional staff. Even though Center for East Turkestan National Interests working hard to establish ideological and the legal base for sovereignty struggle of East Turkestan, but it's not powerful organization and still has many challenges.
And you also mentioned, you did. Why did you choose to compare the Palestinian cows and the East Turkestan cows in your report?
I compared Palestinian cows and East Turkestanians because both suffering under settler colonialism. They have very similarity, and both are Muslim nation. And Palestine gaining diplomatic support from China and from the majority Muslim countries, and East Turkestan gaining some diplomatic support from US and other Western countries. I compared these two nation's causes and compared the historical facts and the legal status of these two nations to understand better what lessons and the resistance experience they can learn from each other. So,
did you find that some inspirational differences for the East Turkestan people or organization when you compare the East Palestinian cows? Some, please.
They were colonized, we were colonized too, and I don't want to get into that. But in the legal perspective, if we compare our legal status, they have many achievements because Palestine is already observer state in the United Nations, but East Turkestanian people considered by the international community as a minority in China and part of China, and they even do not want to call East Turkestan's name as an East Turkestan. They say Xinjiang. So we were not recognized as a colonized nation or occupied nation. These are all of them as distorted facts, distorted legal status of East Turkestan. In fact, East Turkestan was colonized nation by China, and they are indigenous to East Turkestan, but not belong to the United Nations category of indigenous people. And they are not China's minority or China's Muslims. They are Turkic nation in East Turkestan colonized by China. This should be the correct, accurate identity of East Turkestanian people. China even distorted this identity, and international world followed China's, and their legal status was not guaranteed, and we were not observer state. Even the Palestine is observed state. They become observer entity first, and they become observed state.
And you wrote some recommendation for Uyghur organization or international community. What was the most important recommendation in your report to Uyghur organization and the international community?
I wrote 6 recommendation, I think, for the Uyghur organization, and the 6th recommendation to the international world. I think maybe I should choose few or one or two.
Yeah, one or two.
But I don't remember all of them right now. The most important recommendation to the international world is recognizing East Turkestan as an occupied nation and legitimate one of the representative entity of East Turkestan should be invited to participate in UN deliberation on any and all forms of involving its sovereignty, human rights, and the territory. I think maybe another recommendation also important too. China must held accountable for its genocide in East Turkestan, and its so-called New World Order strategy must be evaluated based on the genocide and crime against humanity in East Turkestan. To the Uyghur organizations, in my report, I give many recommendations too, but I would like to say one or two. Okay. The Uyghur diaspora constitutes the principal sources of legitimacy for political, diplomatic, and the military organizations operating in exile, securing and guaranteeing their recognition, those populations' recognition in diaspora, and support and their support. It is crucial for these organizations to attain genuine credibility and the legitimacy. That's why they have to pay attention for that. And another important recommendation is, despite the ideological friction and the fight over legitimacy, all of the Uyghur organizations, including right-wing, left-wing, and the far right-wing, I'm far right-wing, I'm referring to the military groups here, should establish cooperation based on careful prioritizing. Cooperation may maybe start with recognizing the validity of each group and their potential usefulness or significance instead of total rejection.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you for you as well.
Thank you.